Today, a spanner in the works. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, White and latest post covering finance and property news with a distinctively Australian flavour. And today I'm joined again by Robbie Barwick. Hello, Robbie.
Hi, Martin.
Pretty good to talk to you again. And we're going to talk about the exciting subject of the machinery of government, which may sound extremely dry, but then when you think about this in the context of the cash ban legislation and what's coming out, it's a really important conversation.
It absolutely is, because it gets to the question of how democratic are we really?
Yeah, it's a hard question to ask, but actually the more you peel away the onion, the more you realise that things are not quite as they seem.
No, that's true. What we've run into, Martin, is some gatekeepers, and we've identified some at the Treasury. I would say the whole Treasury is a gatekeeper to the government, really.
Yeah.
But there's a democratic process, which is Parliament, and our whole method of engaging is based on encouraging people get engaged with your Parliament, get engaged with your Member of Parliament, get engaged in the process. There's a formal process that Parliament is supposed to be informed by, and what we've come up against is the gatekeepers who are there to make sure that the public is actually locked out of democracy. And that's what we've discovered more of this week.
Yeah. So let's just sort of, wind back the clock slightly. 3,500 submissions, many of which didn't get published for all sorts of reasons. But it went to a Senate review, despite the fact that the bill was actually passed in the lower house, despite themselves. But now the Senate is actually at review. They called for submissions. The submissions closed a couple of weeks ago. And the news came out this last few days that 2,600 submissions were received, but they're not going to expose many of them to the public.
Well, let me correct you there. Over 2,600 submissions were received.
Yep.
And I can never understand why these committees, and this one especially, because we've had a lot to do with it, and to do with the secretary who we've had a run-in with this week, they never want to give an exact number, right? It's always a range. They'll print a sample and the rest won't be published. So I was in Canberra this week. I went up there on Sunday, and I was there for the whole week until Friday. And most of the reason I was there was to do with this cash ban and related matters, to do with the Big Four auditors, etc. That's why I was there. So on Monday, the big news while we were there is that the Senate had in committee, the Economic Legislation Committee had announced over 2,600 submissions. But they weren't submissions. They picked 130 odd to be submissions, and the rest were deemed to be correspondence. Now, because people have got into the habit of participating in this process, there were many people around Australia who, when they were informed on an email that their submission would not be published, it was just going to be treated as correspondence, they were naturally quite angry. And whereas in the past, they'd call us or someone, or they'd say, they wouldn't know how to express their anger, and if they did call us, we'd say, well, call the committee, or call the members of the committee, right? They did that spontaneously. A lot of people got on the phone straight away. So the one that stood out the most was this excellent, meticulously researched, detailed submission, 74-page submission by Melissa Harrison in Western Australia, who's an excellent independent researcher. 74-page submission. And like everyone who even the people who may have submitted a one-line email saying they oppose the bill, she got the same response as them saying they weren't going to publish her submission, right? So Melissa got on the blower to the committee. She could tell that they'd received a lot of calls, right? She complained. And what she got back from them was, it was a misunderstanding. It was a misunderstanding, right? Well, so sometime after that call, they put her submission up. But they're playing games. They're playing funny buggers, if I can use that term, because the giveaway is this. There was a Shane Wright in the Sydney Morning Herald wrote an article on Monday about the submissions that the committee received. And in that article, he said there were over 130 submissions, not over 140, over 130. So it was 130 odd. He said that in that article. And at that time he wrote that, I can assure you, Melissa Harrison's wasn't in there, right? We, the following day, put out a release. The Citizens Party put out a release on this process, going right after it. And we made the point that, like with the Treasury, this committee is suppressing the submissions, right? And we named Melissa's as an example of that suppression of the submissions by dismissing them as correspondence. Well, that afternoon, Craig Isherwood, the leader of the CEC, got a very angry phone call from the secretary of the committee, Mark Fitt. And what happened next is very revealing, because it shows, there's lots of different aspects to it, but it shows you, how the system actually works here. Because one of the red flags straight away is Mr. Fitt being angry. Because when we wrote that, and I wrote it, when I said the committee suppressed the submissions, in my mind, I was thinking of the 6 members of the committee. They are the committee. They're elected politicians, right? And the reason I was thinking of that is because every engagement I've ever had with Mr. Fitt, going back 2 years, on the Glass-Steagall inquiry early this year, the bail-in inquiry at the end of 2017, I would call him up. We would talk about decisions being made in relation to submissions. And every time he says, that's not his decision, that's the committee's decision. So here's a bureaucrat acting angry about an accusation we made about the people that he just does the paperwork for. No, there was a reason he was angry, because we're starting to identify how much of this is a charade, right? So, and he insisted, we've printed Melissa's submission. And it turned out to be true. They had printed Melissa's submission after she'd complained. But the funny buggers was this. In the Shane Wright article, when he said there was only over 130 submissions, one of the ones he identified was from the Uniting Church. So that was already there. When you go to the website now and look for Melissa's submission, it's number 141, and the next one is the Uniting Churches. So when they posted it, they stuck it up in front of the Uniting Churches. They should have made it number 146 at the very end. No, they were trying to cover themselves, right? Cover their butts. I mean, they're so incompetent, it's not funny, right? It's a joke. Keystone Cops. So anyone can see through it. Well, when Mr. Fitt finished his fit with Craig Isherwood, he called Melissa. And what happened then was very revealing, right? So it was already revealing that he was angry. He was justifying their decision, right, in general, to dismiss these things as correspondence, which at that time of his conversation with her didn't apply to her submission, but initially did apply to her submission. And he said to her, the committee chooses to consider submissions as correspondence if they do not specifically address the bill. And the examples were bail-in, trapped in banks. So people calling up talking about bail-in, being trapped in banks, or as he said to someone else later, Glass-Steagall, that is extraneous to the bill. That's what he said, and that's why they don't qualify to be submissions. So now, when I was informed of this discussion, I mean, instinctively, common sense kicks in and goes, well, what's the point of an inquiry? You are supposed to raise the extraneous things. They're called the unintended, unforeseen consequences. That's why you have an inquiry. Now, we instinctively knew that. When we issued the correction on our website, the specific correction about Melissa's, our claim about Melissa's being factually wrong, we did 2 things. We made the point I've just made, that these things are supposed to be, it's not up to them to decide what's extraneous, right? And we also made the point that, okay, so they're now claiming they didn't publish submission, Melissa's, but here's another one, Robert Butler, top Sydney solicitor, who's an expert on this subject and related subjects to do it. His was dismissed as correspondence as well. And if they go put his up, I'm sure we'll find others. We know there's lots of detailed, proper submissions that have just been dismissed as correspondence. But this is the point. They're claiming that they don't have to treat submissions as submissions if they raise extraneous matters. Well, what's the point of an inquiry then? right? This is all predetermined, is what they're admitting to. Now, Melissa Harrison is solid gold as a researcher because he just provoked her to do more research. And I tell you what, she'll bring down the whole system by herself the way she's going, because it turns out there are on the Parliament's website, there is detailed procedures of how the committee process should work and the submissions process, right? And in that, I'll just read you some of the lines from the Parliament's own website. Quote, unless there are strong reasons to withhold publication, that usually means something that's really bad, calling someone a pedophile, something, probably in that kind of category. Unless there are strong reasons to withhold publication, committees normally authorise the publication of submissions received. And that's true. What's happening with these particular issues that we're raising is we're taking outside of the normal club of vested interest who make submissions and bringing in the greatest vested interest of all, the Australian people. And of course, then there's a lot more submissions, and they don't like that.
Well, typically they get 20 or 30, don't they? I mean, which I guess is perhaps more manageable, but this is the real voice of the people.
It is. And don't they want to hear what the people have to say about the laws that are going to affect the people?
Yeah.
No, well, actually, they don't. It's the bottom line. They pretend
Quite clearly
they don't. No. It's a charade. And then it gives this background to the importance of the process. And what they say is very good. It goes, inquiries by committees allow citizens, us, to air grievances about government and bring to light mistreatment of citizens by government. The orderly gathering of evidence by committees and the provision of a forum for all views, can often result in the dissipation of political heat, consideration of issues on their merits, and the development of recommendations that are acceptable to all sides, right? Yeah, you consider all views and people know they've been considered and it had an impact. It will dissipate political heat. All we've experienced in the last few months with this process of blocking the consideration of all views is the political heat's exploded, right? I mean, whoever came up with these procedures was quite insightful, really. So why aren't they following them? And here's the kicker. It may not be until all the evidence has been gathered that unintended consequences or unforeseen problems with a bill emerge. And that's exactly what Mr. Fitt said they are not interested in. Right? Call me Mark Fitt and tell me I'm wrong. I sent him an email with my mobile number in case he had an objection to the way I issued the correction that he demanded. You tell me I'm wrong. You said this stuff's extraneous to the bill. You decided that, yet your procedures are you are supposed to be open, have your ears open to the public telling you what is unintended consequences and unforeseen problems, right? And this is the best bit. In a sense, committees take Parliament to the people. They provide opportunities for people to have their say on the issues being investigated. Committees provide a public forum for the presentation of various views of individual citizens and interest groups. Well, they've had the interest groups coming out of their ears. We're telling the individual citizens to start participating in this process, and they don't like it, right? So this is, now, what do? Do we get cynical and go, oh yeah, well, see, the system's rigged? No, we have to understand, based on what I just read, is the formal part of the system is on our side. We are entirely within our rights. And when we get treated like this, you don't take it, right? You do what, and people are already doing. You get on the blower, you protest, etc., and you realise that no, they don't have a leg to stand on, and we're not going to be treated like this. All those members of Parliament should read all the submissions, right? And if that means the inquiry takes longer, well, so be it. Well, who are they to put arbitrary deadlines on these things, right? They're going to keep passing laws, and they pass way too many of them. When Aaron Isherwood called up the committee to ask about why his wasn't published, and remember Aaron's the guy who put in the Freedom of Information request that helped expose what Treasury was doing, he got this mealy-mouthed excuse about, oh, it's not published, but the committee's going to read them. And when he pressed on that, you mean they're going to read all 2,600? Well, because of course they weren't, right? It's just that he got a fob-off reflex, which wasn't true, and you could tell it wasn't true when they're not going to read all 2,600, and they don't want to read 20 if they can get away with it. Now, the other thing is this that I have to highlight. So that's from Aaron and Melissa's work. There's another person who informed me. He made a call to the chairman of the committee's office. And this call was very revealing because he called the chairman to complain. Remember I said earlier that Mark Fitt has told me for 2 years, it's the political people on the committee that make the decisions. So he called the chairman to complain about that. Now, he didn't get put through to the chairman, but he put through to his office staff spoke to him. And what did they say? Oh, no, that's not our decision. That's the secretary's decision. Right? Which is true. But for 2 years, the secretary's been saying it's their decision. So this person called the secretariat and he made his complaint to them, and they said, no, it's the committee member's decision. And he told them he'd just spoken to the chairman's office, who told him as the secretary. And they said, we'll transfer to someone else. He got put onto Mark Fitt, and same discussion. And when Mark Fitt again tried to say, no, it's not his decision, it's the committee's decision. And when he said, I just spoke to the chairman's office and they said it's your decision, there was another little mini fit, and he demanded to know the name of the person that my friend had spoken to in the committee, in the chairman's office. And my friend genuinely didn't remember, right? But, that's, all's been exposed, right? The mask is off. And I think we have to, while we're having this longer fight against the bill, you have these skirmishes, these altercations in the process, and you've got to take stock and realise just how much clout we have here, right? We're bulldozing through with all the power of all the people that are getting involved in this process, and the normal gatekeeper mechanisms that are used to lock people out of democracy that no one notices are being thoroughly exposed, and by being exposed, we can blast them away.
Yeah, well, it certainly shows the power of the people, right? And I've had many, many people write to me since that email that they received, exactly on the same lines, to which I replied, well, don't just stop there, don't just roll over, right? Because every time somebody picks up the phone and complains, every time somebody sends an email back, it's all creating more momentum, and those in power will realise more and more that, in fact, we're just not going to roll over and let this continue, because essentially, one side in the political machine is saying it's not my problem, it's their problem. The other guy's saying, no, I didn't make the decision, somebody else made it, right? The truth is, they don't really want to engage around the critical issues that we're all raising, because they will prefer to have an easy life. It's not our role. It's not our role to make them have an easy life. It's important that these critical issues are actually explored and exposed. And as Melissa's research showed, it's the unintended consequences, it's the full implications. That's the whole point of having a review.
And we've won the argument on all those. The things we're raising as unintended consequences, we've proven it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They've got a pre-existing agenda. They're determined to ram it through, and we have become a massive spanner in the works. There's no doubt about that. I think people should take heart from this. We know that this committee is supposed to report on the 7th of February. They will be discussing this altercation as we speak. In fact, we know that on Thursday they had a meeting, and because Mr. Fitt revealed that he had to meet with the senators on Thursday, and this would have been the whole discussion, right? How do we continue to just go through the motions and get away with that if we can, or do we actually have to take this seriously? And I think there might have been some reasonable people in the room that might say, well, stop playing your games and take the concern seriously. I would hope Senator Rex Patrick did that, for instance. He's on this committee from the Centre Alliance. Because the Labor guys and the Liberal guys, they're sort of more, locked into this kind of fake procedural way of doing things, and they've got to take stock of what's happening. Um, uh, I was just as an aside. There are some. I attended an auditing regulation of auditing hearing. There's another separate committee on Friday, and I was very impressed with the Labor member of Parliament on that committee and the way she was going after the representatives of the Big Four auditors and their conflicts of interest, and it was genuine. I was looking for, is this show, is this point scoring, or is this genuine? And the Liberals on the committee were very uncomfortable when they were trying to run interference and deflect. Now, I expected it from, the Green Senator Peter Whish-Wilson was there as well. I know he's genuine on this matter, but she was genuine. And so, there are people in the Labor Party that are going to be able to make the connection between KPMG, that as we've identified, that's been running this agenda on the cash ban, right, and who it is, a thoroughly conflicted organisation and disreputable organisation when it comes to this stuff, so they can make that connection and take stock of that as they're dealing with this issue, right? What I want to encourage people to do, Martin, so in the next effectively 2.5 months, we've got Christmas in the middle, etc., but don't worry about that. Parliament is sitting all next week, right? So today's Saturday, you and I are recording this. Parliament's sitting all next week. It's the last sitting date of the year. Nothing's set in stone. An example of that is this union bill, ensuring integrity bill. They thought they had Pauline Hanson and Malcolm Roberts and Jackie Lambie's votes locked down. And at the last minute, they didn't. And they're spewing about it. But remember the story that we've told on your show many times, about 2 years ago, when the bail-in law passed. Matthias Cormann, the minister in charge, did the dirty on those One Nation senators while they were in their offices waiting for him to get back to them on the amendment they wanted to pass. They ran the bill through, right? This week was karma for that. And it's not just going to be one paper. This is what happens, right?
Yep.
So One Nation and those kind of parties have prioritised this cash ban bill to defeat it, right? And there's going to be a big fight over this in the next few months. So don't assume things are locked in stone, that when you see this behaviour, think we can't defeat it. No, we're only just beginning, right? This is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We're exposing this all the time. What we have now is proof that the 3 times this bill has engaged the public, the Treasury consultation, the Victorian Liberal Party Council vote last weekend, and now this Senate inquiry, massive responses. 3 times, right? Massive response, overwhelming vote of the Victorian Liberal Party, etc. Those facts are ringing in the ears of members of Parliament. So I encourage people. We've got a website that's dedicated to the cash ban called stopthecashban.com.au. Today, it just takes you to the cash ban petition, which you should share everyone to do. But we're changing that website so it becomes a one page with a series of links to take you to different things you can do. And the main thing is share the petition, call your MPs and join delegations. And that delegation process, we have about 100 in the pipeline that I've been informed of. Right, we know around Australia, people are getting together to organise 100. Some bloke called me when I got off the plane on yesterday to tell me the night before he'd been invited to a group in Newcastle, some pub in Newcastle. A group of people got together to discuss the cash ban fight. Right, someone knew it was happening, and he went along. And this guy happens to he's an American who lives in Australia, used to make documentaries for National Public Radio. So he called me about it, etc. This sort of thing is happening, is spontaneous. Those delegations are very, very effective. It really makes an impact on the members of Parliament. So we'll go to that website and go to it often to see the updates, right? But get involved in that part of the process. Sign and share the petition. Keep calling members of Parliament. So every time there's a development like this, you call up, and half the job of calling up is to make sure they know about it. Even though you're adding a complaint, it's making sure they know, because they're all kept in the dark, right? So you call up to tell them about this, and then where possible, get involved in a delegation. So a group of 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 of you. There was one in Adelaide with 12 people, right? Go see members of Parliament. You'll have a week or so before Christmas. You'll have about 3 weeks after the holiday period in January to really hit members of Parliament hard. And by the time they come back in February, when this bill will be debated finally, right, we might have got to the point where the Liberals are just looking for a way to quietly pull it. That's got to be our objective.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see whether that would happen. I think I'll make one other point. If you were of those 2,600 who basically got the email to say that your submission was not going to be posted, right, what I would do is basically pick up the phone and call the members of the committee and
Yes.
basically make the point that you want your submission posted,
Yes.
right? Because if they got 2,600 calls by 5 or 6 on the committee, that would be quite a big move, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. And next week is a window of opportunity to do that.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
They're in Parliament. You can we provide the link on our website, but you can go to the Parliament website and you can aph.gov.au and you can see the link up there. Call the members on that committee and hit them hard. Why isn't my so you're making 6 calls basically,
Yep.
right? And if they get that 6 calls multiplied by 2,000 plus people, what's the switchboard meltdown?
Absolutely. Well, so the key message is, this is now the time to really get activated on this issue because it's going to be a really important couple of months. But I think there is a little bit of glimmer of a light and the door opening a little bit on some of the pressures that we're applying. And it's all to do with the power of the people. So the spanner in the works is really creating some waves.
Absolutely.
Robbie, thanks for your time today. So it's not too late to make your views known to Parliament. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.